You're listening to the official EFL podcast.
Deafening sound. Guy Butters must score. He doesn't. He's missed. It's saved by Nicky Weaver. And Manchester City are back in the first division. That is quite an astonishing game.
De Vries with the cross. The header. It's in. It's Connor Jennings. Tranmere Rovers, whose double dip led to their world caving in, could be getting back to where they were in double quick time.
The ball in, header blocked. Jimmy Glass scores for Carabao United. Amazing scenes at Brunton Park.
Hello, I'm Ben Turner and welcome back to the EFL Preview Show. This week, joining me to look ahead to the action in the Sky Bet Championship, a man who's played more than 400 matches in the EFL and was the last player to captain Reading to promotion to the Premier League. It is, of course, Jobi McAnuff. Meanwhile, in Sky Bet Leagues 1 and 2, former Rochdale and Tranmere star Joe Thompson joins us again to look ahead to our featured games. In the Championship, it's time for the run-in as things are hotting up at both ends of the table. This week we feature Fulham's match against Bristol City, the West Yorkshire derby between Leeds and Huddersfield, and the strugglers collide as Charlton take on Middlesbrough. In League 1, it's a must-win for Ipswich against league leaders Coventry. And in League 2, it's a clash between two promotion rivals as Port Vale head to Cheltenham. But first, let's look back at last weekend's Carabao Cup Final. In a minute, you're going to hear from Manchester City goalscorer Rodri and perhaps their most famous fan, Noel Gallagher. But first, I spoke to fans of both teams before the match, including Dan and Josh, our Villa and City fans from last week's show, who were sitting together at the final.
It's already ours. You've got it. It's already ours, mate. I don't know what you mean. Do you think we can lift it? We are going to lift it, my man.
What would it mean to you to see your team win this?
Oh, everything. This cup matters the most to us. Putting so much effort to get to the final.
Big game ahead today. How are you feeling?
Optimistic. Hopefully we can win Villa, but just don't know. It's going to be a tough task. But hopefully we can pull it off and get into Europe next year. That's exactly what it is, isn't it? Memories. I mean, we were down here last year. Well, we've been down for the last 2 years with playoffs, so it's a nice occasion, but yeah, it's good to come to the showpiece and hopefully pull it off.
Big occasion today for Manchester City.
It is.
How do you see it going?
I see City winning. Yeah.
Do occasions like this, you know, how much do they inspire you as a fan at the minute? It's been a Manchester City fan. Wembley being a second home for you.
Well, it's inspired me to come from Germany to watch this game today. Yeah, I'm loving it. Every moment of it. I don't care whether we win, lose or draw. I just want to enjoy the occasion.
So guys, one Villa fan, one Man City fan together with me today. What are your expectations for the game?
Well, a temporary ceasing of hostilities between the two of us, I think. From a Villa fan perspective, I'm just glad to be here. It's lovely to be at Wembley for the second time, personally in less than a year, but obviously as Villa, second time, third time in 2 years, which is great. Expecting a pretty tight game, and I'd like to hope that we could maybe not concede too early.
Looking at the teams, Villa might have a chance here, might they? City resting a few players.
Yeah, I think we've shuffled our pack a little bit and brought the squad into play, but John Stones will be out to prove something, and Phil Foden, as a kid who's grown up in Stockport, what a chance for him. So he'll want to have a good game. You look at our bench, you've got De Bruyne, Silva, Mendy, Mahrez, Gabriel Jesus. There's world-class talent on that bench. So if things maybe don't go our way in the first hour, then you can imagine Pep will look to his bench pretty quickly.
Still a special occasion for you as a City fan.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Wembley in a work capacity for various different finals and things like that. I've never actually got to see City here or in a cup final, so it feels like a really, really special day for me.
Finally, guys, score predictions.
It hurts me to say it, but 2-0 City. I have to be honest, but my heart says 1-0 sneaky Villa, but I think my head says maybe 2-0 City, fairly comfortable.
I think probably 2-1 City. I have a feeling that Villa might score first. catch us with our Achilles heel on the counter attack. He's becoming a bit more of a legend, but Claudio Bravo, I think you've always got a chance against him, but I think City's firepower will always come through in the end.
Got some space, Sterling.
Here he is, moving out to get that space, but running into traffic. Rodri, Foden round the back. Aguero! It's found its way in, and he has done it again. Inside 20 minutes.
You just saw it developing with Raheem Sterling over this side. Plays back in, and Rodri, it's the timing of the run from Foden. Really clever.
Well, for me it's incredible. I'm 23 years old. I never expect winning titles, and for me it's a dream being here in Wembley, scoring goals, having titles. For me it's incredible.
It's headed in cheaply by Rodri.
For my teammates, I think we haven't got an easy season, many things for us, but we are here always fighting 2 titles in a row now, and we keep going. That's our mentality. For me, it's always helping the team is incredible. It was 2-0 because I think the game was a bit relaxed for us, but we conceded that goal that make pressure on us, and of course it was tight until the end. The last minutes we suffered a little bit, but for me it was important.
Stones. By El Ghazi and Samatta has powered Aston Villa back into the contest. A John Stones slip, a quick cross and a super header.
It's pretty amazing actually, 3 in a row is amazing. I think we were great. If we'd have gone in at 2-0 we'd have murdered them, but we let them back into it, but great game.
Hat-trick in the Carabao Cup for Manchester City. In the end, the favourites have flourished once again in a major final, but Aston Villa really played their part.
So that was last weekend. Time now to look forward to the coming weekend in the Championship, where Middlesbrough will be hoping their point against Forest is a sign of change in fortunes, and where Fulham will be hoping to close the gap to the top 2 in the Saturday lunchtime kick-off.
The Sky Bet Championship.
Crowd of players, the goalkeeper has got in a bit of a mess there. The referee's had a look, and he has allowed the goal to stand. A heartbreaker for Middlesbrough.
He backs in undoubtedly, but he's clever. He uses it like it's a centre half. That is not a free kick, and that is quite a delightful touch.
They're both up there with him. Clicks touch, and then there's the third. Tyler Roberts. The Leeds United machine is rolling again. Destination Premier League.
Kamara's on his way. Caballero tearing through the middle. This to finish it once and for all. It's Caballero taking his time. Kamara! That puts it to bed once and for all.
So we'll start with that early kick-off on Saturday, Jobi, which sees Bristol City take on Fulham. Is this a game that's, sort of a dress rehearsal for the playoffs, do you think?
Yeah, I think it could well be. Obviously Fulham have pretty much cemented their place, at least in the playoffs this year, and have been there or thereabouts. Bristol City, who many thought would be similar in terms of really establishing themselves in those playoffs this year, haven't quite been able to do that, especially in recent weeks. So, for them it would be really important to make sure they're in there. But as it stands now, obviously where Fulham are and Bristol trying to get in there, it could well be a fixture that we see in the post-season this year.
You actually tipped Bristol City to be a dark horse for the top 2 a few weeks back. 14 points adrift now. What's gone wrong for them in recent weeks?
Yeah, I think, that was probably after they went on a really good run, won 4 games on the bounce and, really looked to be pushing themselves up towards, certainly again in those playoff places and even a little bit beyond. They've gone on a real bad run recently, obviously not winning in 4. I think when you look at the games, they've obviously come up against Leeds, West Brom, the 2 best teams in the league. A real disappointing result and performance against Huddersfield. I think that's the one that really would have worried Lee Johnson the most. And I know he's a bit happier with the level of performance, to get that draw away at Millwall. So, listen, I think that point is a good one to just get them back on track, and they really need now to just try and go on a little run and get a bit of consistency going into these last 10 games.
But they're actually the only team in the top half to have that negative goal difference as well. How concerning could that be for them?
I think very concerning. I think from looking at it, the goals conceded, although they haven't been great recently in terms of, shots on target and actually creating opportunities. I think over the course of the season, to concede 52 goals, it's the most in the top half of the table, and that's something that Lee Johnson will not be happy with. Goal scoring overall this season hasn't been a massive issue. It has recently, but I think those goals conceded will be one that they really need to address if they are to get that place in the playoffs.
Yeah, 52 goals. That's a lot to ship in. But could their experiences from the last few seasons of them just missing out on that top six as well be an issue for Lee Johnson as well? Obviously, because he's been there during that time. You know what? I thought, come the start of the season, that was something that might actually stand them in good stead this year. The fact that there's been a gradual improvement. Obviously, 11th a couple of years ago, 8th last year. I really thought this would be the year that they could really kick on and get to that next level and get in those playoffs. I think as time goes on and the longer the season goes on and they're not quite where they want to be, it could be something psychologically that is in the back of a few of those minds, that have been through that. Obviously the manager himself is surely hoping to avoid that situation. So yeah, it'll be a really interesting one this last 10 games on how they use that disappointment of the last couple of years to try and get them into those playoffs this season. And Fulham a shock, despite a shock result to Barnsley a few weeks back, they've been consistently picking up points since the turn of the year. Do they, still have a shout at reaching the top two, do you think? I think it's going to be a tough ask for them, when you look at their fixtures, and obviously we'll touch on that in a little bit. Their form's been good. I think it's only 2 losses in 11 games in the league, won 6, drawn 3. So overall, I think Scott Parker will be happy with that. I think you look at the last 6 games, again, they've only lost 1. But the only 2 teams that have been better form than them are West Brom and Fulham. And I think when you're the team trying to catch them, that's going to be an issue for them. Of course, it goes without saying they're going to need to collect more points than those 2 in the remaining 10 games, and they seem to have got over their blips and are picking up points regularly now. So I still fancy West Brom and Leeds to finish in the top 2. Well, let's talk about that run-in, though. As you mentioned, for Fulham, they've got to play Brentford, Leeds at Ellen Road, Forest and both West Brom away from home. As a player, would you find that daunting going into those games? No, not at all. I think if you want to achieve something, and we all know how hard this league is, and we all know how hard it is to get in those automatic places, you want the opportunity to do that, and by having the games against the teams that they're going up against, that gives them that opportunity, really. So, I'd certainly say they'd be looking forward to the games. They've got a lot of players in that Fulham squad that, have got a really good track record in terms of getting promoted with various teams. Obviously, Fulham themselves, a few players left over, and, players from various other clubs that have achieved it. So, no, I don't think they'll be fazed by it. I think they'll look at it as an opportunity. And listen, they go to Ellen Road and get a result there, and they go to West Brom and get a result there, then they're going to be right in the picture. So, as a player, you just want things in your hands, as difficult as it can be sometimes. And, with those fixtures left, they've still very much got their destiny in their own hands. Yeah, good chance for them to take points off teams around them. Moving on to a match which has permutations at both ends of the table now, the West Yorkshire derby between Leeds and Huddersfield. Speaking of run-ins, Leeds' final 10 games of the season looks a lot more favourable than Fulham's. Is complacency probably the only thing that could stop them going up? I'd be very surprised if complacency was around that squad at the moment. I think you only have to look at that little run that they've been on, prior to the recent good form where they couldn't get a result for love nor money, to really, I think, give them that realisation that they've got to make sure they're at it every single game. I think the loss at home to Wigan was another example of what can happen if you're not quite at it in this league. And I'd look at those fixtures, pretty much every team there, apart from, I would probably say, Derby at that point, I've got something to play for. Even this game, obviously Huddersfield are fighting for their lives. They've got Cardiff, Fulham trying to get in the playoff places, Luton trying to fight off relegation, Blackburn still in with a chance, Stoke, Swansea, Barnsley,
and finish at Charlton, who could be fighting for their lives. So, I think that's the best thing about this league. Right till the end of the season, there's almost something on every single game of football, and I'm sure for Leeds, they won't be going into any of the games thinking they've, done anything until they've actually achieved it.
And looking at some of the players now, Tyler Roberts, a man who came off the bench last time out and scored twice at Hull. It's been a recurring theme throughout the season in terms of talking about Patrick Bamford's place in that team. But should Roberts be getting a chance now up front on his own?
I think when you talk about the manager, I think Bielsa is very, very firm in how he sees his teams playing and the roles that certain players play. And obviously Patrick Bamford's been key in everything that Leeds have done this year. 35 appearances tells its own story, and I think the role that he plays is a very specific one that, again, I think the manager feels he does the best at the club. Not just obviously the goals, but bringing people into play. The likes of Jack Harrison, Helder Costa, running off of him. And I think his link-up play is very good. I think we saw it earlier in the season with Eddie Nketiah, who obviously had a similar impact coming off the bench and scoring goals. But I think he likes that from his substitutions, and he certainly got that at the weekend. But for me, I think he'll stick with Bamford.
But if you scored 2 goals coming off the bench, surely you would expect a starting place in the team, would you?
Well, I think when the team's been winning, ultimately they were 2-0 up, when the substitution was made. And again, you've just got to come and do your job as best you can and try and make the manager, make a decision maybe for the next game. And of course, Tyler Roberts has done that. But it's going to take more than just the 2 goals, I think, to really make a big change. And I think in terms of Bielsa, he'll be happy with how things are going at the moment.
Yeah, more talk as well about a potential England call-up for Calvin Phillips. It seems to be getting more serious now in terms of that discussion. Would that be a distraction for him, do you feel, in the coming weeks?
I don't think so. I think, as he has done all this season, he's probably focusing on his performances for Leeds United. I'm sure that will be very much his priority, trying to get his team promoted. And again, like Bamford, he's been a pivotal figure in what Leeds have done this year. And, I think anything on top of that, when you start talking about England, obviously we spoke about Ben White at times this year, that's all bonus material. So I'm sure if he keeps doing as well as he is, and for me particularly if they get promoted and hold on to him and he goes up to the Premier League and starts playing well, I'm sure that he'll be a serious contender, for an England call-up. But I can't see that being a major distraction for him right now.
Yeah, Huddersfield, meanwhile, are in what has become such a tight relegation battle over the last few weeks, which we'll talk about in the next match that we cover. But despite 2 wins on the bounce, they're still only 4 points clear of that bottom 3. How important is it for them to have a positive performance here to keep those confidence levels up?
Yeah, listen, I think those 2 wins were a real shot in the arm for Danny Cowley and everyone at Huddersfield. They were on a real bad run, really looked like they were really in danger of getting sucked into it. And again, that confidence that, not just 1 victory, but 2 on the bounce can bring is invaluable at this stage of the season when you're fighting. It's all about form, it's all about momentum. And, when you're not doing too well, sometimes it's hard to see 1 win coming, let alone, 3 or 4 that you might need to keep you up. So, it'd be very important, performance levels stay high. And I think from his point of view, the manager will be going into the game, full of confidence, although it'll be a difficult game.
You mentioned that Wigan performance at Ellen Road earlier, but should Huddersfield maybe take heart from that game a few weeks ago and approach the game like that they did, or with the quality of the players they have? Do you think they need to take the game more to Leeds?
I think you have to be careful, particularly going away to Ellen Road, about opening up too much. And again, knowing the Cowleys a little bit, I know they're very, very studious, and they will have watched, I'm sure, that Wigan performance and result, and surely taken some things from that. I think they'll make sure that Huddersfield are very hard to beat. They're set up well and very well organised. So I'm sure they'll go and make it difficult for Leeds. I wouldn't want to go there and be too open and expansive, if I'm being totally honest. And I think they just need to try and prey on, I suppose, that pressure that you have every time Leeds are playing at Ellen Road, and just try and make it as difficult for them as you can.
It's suspected as well that Danny Cowley could make up to 9 changes since their 2-0 defeat against Leeds in December. Is that a good thing for those players, as they wouldn't have experienced that defeat?
I don't think it'll have too much bearing. I think it does show how much of a turnover in terms of players that Huddersfield have had. I certainly feel from their point of view that it has been a work in progress. I think they're trying to find the right players, the right balance, the right mix, for them to move forward with. And, first things first, they need to make sure they avoid relegation. And I think once they do that, they'll be able to try and look and probably build a bit more for next year. So I don't think that'll be too much of a factor, if I'm being honest.
Well, now on to a match which truly is a fight for survival, with Charlton taking on Middlesbrough. Psychologically, how big a game is this for both teams? Neither can afford to lose. No,
I think when you're down there, as both teams are, the term 6-pointer gets thrown around a lot, but this truly is one of those games. It's a game that you really don't want to lose. Middlesbrough obviously got a chance to leapfrog Charlton, and again, psychologically, that being in the bottom 3 or being out of it can be massive at this stage of the season. So, from their point of view, obviously they'll be looking at this game to try and get ahead. And again, from Charlton's point of view, it's about keeping the teams below you for as long as you can, really. Even if it is just a point, as it is at the moment, you're still looking down rather than looking up. So, I'm sure there'll be a lot of nerves. Again, a big game, and it'll just be who handles it better on the day that comes out on top.
As you mentioned there, Charlton trying to avoid the teams below them taking over them. But how big a chance is this for them, though? Can go 4 points clear of that relegation zone if they do get that win.
Yeah, massive opportunity. And I think, again, it really depends on the manager's position in terms of how he sees the game. Is it a matter of not losing and keeping someone just below you? Or is it a matter of being really positive and saying, right, we're going to get a little bit of distance, a little bit of breathing space, and really go and attack the game? So, I'm sure for Charlton, it'll be one that Lee Bowyer's going, knowing his character and how he always went about games. I'm sure he'll be looking at it, attacking it positively and trying to get that 3 points.
Yeah, which approach would you prefer as a player?
I'd want to go for it. I think, it's very dangerous to go into games maybe thinking, we'll just try and be safe and not lose. I think from my point of view, you go out to win every single game, and for me it's a bit of risk and reward, and the reward for Charlton is massive if they can win that game.
And Lee Bowyer himself says you'll need 50 points to stay up. Can you see both teams achieving that?
Well, I think from Middlesbrough's point of view, the fact they haven't won for so long, I think is a real concern, because again, when you're going through a barren run, you're looking for that one result, let alone, again, probably 4 that they're going to need to get to that 50-point mark. Charlton, again, looking at the fixtures and the teams they've got coming, there's opportunities there to get points. Again, we spoke about teams that are all battling for something. Charlton have got QPR, who will be mid-table, Birmingham, which are a couple of games possibly that they see themselves picking points up in, and then they've got obviously some other teams that are right around them. Hull, who are just in free fall at the moment, can't buy a win. Obviously this game against Middlesbrough and Wigan are also struggling. So there's opportunities there certainly for Charlton. I'd be a little bit more concerned for Middlesbrough.
Yeah, and it seems the chairman, Steve Gibson, has given Jonathan Woodgate that dreaded vote of confidence. How would players in that dressing room usually react when your manager is being spoken about like that by the chairman?
I think it's a positive thing. I've been at clubs where you don't hear anything. Managers under pressure, and the silence is deafening sometimes, because there's things going on. There's talks being had, but you're not privy to any of them, or you're not sure if the chairman is backing the manager. So I think from a player's point of view, it's a positive thing to hear the chairman backing the manager, as Steve Gibson has and always does with his managers, I must say. He's certainly a chairman that, if I was a manager, I'd like to work with. He seems to give people a great opportunity in the first place, but then really backs them, which he has done with Jonathan Woodgate. And so I think from the players' point of view, it's certainly something they can use to help them get over the line this year.
But as you say, Middlesbrough, one of those teams that haven't won in such a long time. Are they one of the teams that we should be most concerned about, though, when we're looking at who's going to be relegated this season?
Yeah, for sure. Again, it's that form, it's that winning a few games. You only have to look at even below them, although they're still 4 points adrift, Barnsley and Luton. They've won a few games recently, and again, that confidence that can come into the squad off the back of that is massive at this stage of the season. When you're looking at form alone, Middlesbrough, Hull, right down there and really struggling to pick points up. So again, for me, I would be concerned about them. What's really interesting, with Charlton and Middlesbrough is they've actually got a lot of the same teams to play. They've got Hull, QPR, Millwall, Cardiff and Reading that they're all playing. So it will come down to how well they perform against teams in a similar kind of run to each other. So that would be one to look out for sure.
But will those, we talked about confidence, will those confidence levels be boosted by that point at home to Forest? Maybe it's not necessarily an easy game to play Forest at home.
I think before the game you look at it and think we'd probably take a point against a team that is very much in the playoff mix and had a good season, but I think when you look at the actual game itself, conceding late, 86th minute, and again when you're down there, and I know Jonathan Woodgate spoke about the actual Lewis Graban goal itself and maybe the decision going against them, you feel that way every time a decision doesn't quite go with you. It's because we're down here, we're not getting the rub of the green, and they've got to be very careful that they don't get into that mindset of thinking everything's against them. It's only them that are going to turn things around, and I think they would have been disappointed to concede as late as that.
Sky Bet League One.
Thanks, Jobi. Now let's move on to Sky Bet League 1 and 2 with Joe Thompson. But first, let's go to Blackpool, where Neil Critchley has swapped Jurgen Klopp's Reds to take charge of the Tangerines. Here's the man himself speaking to the club's media team.
It's important that the team plays a way that the supporters can identify with. So, a team that's going to be on the front foot, playing attacking football, playing in the opposition's half, forward thinking. We want to control the game and dominate the opposition as much as we can. Therefore, we decide what happens on the football pitch. But there's going to be some non-negotiables as well. I think that the supporters want to see hard work, passion, energy, intensity, and they're the things that I think we can guarantee. And then hopefully the results will take care of itself. If we get some of those things right, then hopefully the fans will see that there's a style and a way that we want to play on a weekly basis, and they'll be enjoying what they see. And if they enjoy what they see, then I'm sure they'll support the club like they have done over the previous years.
So, Joe, Neil Critchley's got the job at Blackpool, clearly well thought of by Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp as the club's under-23s manager, but will the players be excited by this appointment?
Yeah, I would think so. He comes with a very good reputation, a young manager, and I think it speaks volumes of his ambition, the fact that he's thrown himself into it. It's a great opportunity for him. There was a lot of talk about when he guided that side to beating Shrewsbury in the FA Cup. But like you say, he comes with a very good reputation, well thought of from Jurgen Klopp, and I think the players will respect that and want to and be keen and eager to impress him.
Yeah, a baptism of fire this weekend, as well as they take on Fleetwood in a Lancashire derby. Is that the perfect way, though, to come into a job like this?
Yeah, I would say so. You might as well throw yourself in the deep end against a very good Fleetwood team that are a banging form. They had another great away victory against Ipswich in midweek, so it's going to be a tough game. But it's a derby, like you say, and anything can happen. And I'm sure he won't need to motivate the squad in general.
Well, moving on to our featured match in League One, which sees Ipswich actually take on league leaders Coventry City. A lot of pressure now on Paul Lambert, though. Does he simply have to win this match to save his job?
I wouldn't say so. I think, it's a bit, how can I put it? Sudden to be saying something like that. They're sat in ninth. There's still loads of points to play for, but he will want to turn it around sooner rather than later. And, a good result against high-flying Coventry, and you have that momentum and it shifts your way in a way.
In a way, it's sort of the perfect game for him as well. But what's it like being in a dressing room, knowing that your manager is under such pressure? Obviously, Ipswich are a big club at this level.
Yeah, it's happened a few times, when the team's not doing so well and the manager is under pressure and he's on the verge of getting the sack. And it's awkward at times. The changing rooms become, or can become, quite divided depending on who's playing, who's out the team. And ultimately, though, it comes down to the players and they can physically do something about it. And I think they'll want to, prove their worth and show that they've still got that fighting spirit for their manager.
And Mark Robins, another manager who's doing terrifically well in League One, now 13 games unbeaten, and has won some tough games in that run as well. Is there anyone who could stop them on their way to promotion, do you think?
Well, I think there's a few teams in and around them, the likes of Rotherham, Portsmouth and Wickham and Sunderland and probably Fleetwood, that would say otherwise. But when they're in that position, 64 points, 3 losses all season, that's testament to Mark Robins and his men. That shows that, even if it is a tight game, they can stay resolute and grind out results. So they're sat, top of the tree in a way, and they'll be really having that promotion set in the sights.
Sky Bet League 2.
And then let's move on to Sky Bet League 2, where our featured game is Cheltenham against Port Vale. Both these teams in the playoff places, but should Cheltenham be eyeing up those automatic spots as well, do you think?
Possibly. 10 games to go or so, and the minimum they'll be expecting now is a playoff position. So they will really try and keep that momentum. 5 wins on the spin. They're clearly in great form. And as a group, you just want to keep that going, and the games won't or can't come quick enough for them, because you just want another 90 minutes to go and pick your wits against another team. So they'll be really have their sights set for promotion.
Yeah, you mentioned there 5 wins on the bounce for Michael Duff's side as well. How important is it being in that winning habit when you're heading into the business end of the season, the run-in now?
You've hit the nail on the head, Ben. It's that business end of the season. It's that chance to go and create memories, win medals. And it's a wonderful opportunity for you as a player to go and create a little bit of history for yourself, but also for the club. So it is all about that momentum. And you've seen it. Teams do come late, and there is often one that surprises a lot. And, why can't it be Cheltenham?
And as a player, again, does the mentality change at this stage of the season for everyone at clubs?
I'd say so. There's an element of pressure. And it tends to be where things are decided. You don't win the league in August, September, but possibilities are now. So players vary and different people deal with it in different ways. But I tended to like the last 10 games of the season. It made it all the hard work worthwhile in a way.
And 7 games unbeaten for Port Vale as well. They're enjoying things at the minute, certainly. Like we mentioned, in those playoff places, last season they struggled to stay up. How do you explain a transformation like that?
I think it has to come down to John Askey and the players. He's done a fantastic job since he's gone in, and that's credit to him and his staff and the players. He did very, very well with Macclesfield prior. And his teams have always been honest, extremely hard-working, and just fundamentally do the basics well. And that's what you need in League Two. You need, that experience, but also that youthfulness. And I really think they've got a good blend. And with the likes of Pope and Cullen up top, you always know you've got goals. So, yeah, he's done a fantastic job.
Well, Joe, thanks for your time this week. Just before we go, quick mention to a special couple of bonus episodes we've got coming up for you on the podcast, as I went to meet former Exeter City manager Paul Tisdale. Here's a clip, though, of him talking about his start to life in management at MK Dons.
What I signed was 3 or 4 first-team players and 5 or 6 squad players, because I knew to get out of the league, I needed a squad. So strategically, I signed some some players who, again, the chairman didn't like it.
Yeah.
He wanted me to sign 14 players only, but spend all the money on 14 superstars. I wanted to sign 24 players.
Yeah.
And I wanted 7 or 8 of them to know their squad players to keep the equilibrium and the chemistry in the squad.
Yeah.
And you get through a long, hard season. And we were flying to Christmas time playing 3 centre backs. I had 4 centre backs injured for 3 months from that point onwards. So at that moment, I had to change everything I'd worked on to Christmas. January, we went to Bury in January, and we finished that game. We lost 4-3 and been 3-1 up. And literally, that was the moment the season crashed.
Yes, he really does lay it all out in that interview, which you'll be able to hear the first part of on Monday. Don't forget to like and subscribe the podcast to help people find it and hear more in-depth interviews from some of the EFL's biggest names. Thanks again for listening.